Welcome to the Show 6 podcast, where we break down the championship series for Pokemon Go. Today, we're coming to you with breaking news. Shadow Typhlosion is breaking the meta, MartoGalde is breaking records, and the Utrecht Special Championship saw a heartbreaking final. Pokemonemaker is even breaking the barrier between the Asian Pacific region and the global tournament circuit. So lock in, good luck, and have fun when we explore everything breaking after a little break. Welcome in, everybody. My name is Zizwilis. I'm here with Speedy as Chief. And we were before the podcast talking a little bit because both of us had intros prepared. I got my will. I got to say it. I liked it. I thought it tied everything together really neatly.
It's so ironic because you say tied together, and that is like the inverse of breaking things apart. So again, with the poetry with you is nonstop sometimes. But no, I thought it was great, and I agree with you. So many different things were broken, whether it was the metagame or records with Marto and Santiago. And I think this was really a very historic week for competitive Pokemon, historic couple of weeks. And like you said, we've got a lot of events to cover. We're going to start with Melbourne. We're going to go 10,000 miles over to the Netherlands for Utrecht. Then we're going to talk about Santiago, and we will wrap up with a couple of TPC playoffs, which I think were really fun. One of those was actually covered by Rise. I believe Rise casted TeddIness's battles. I haven't watched the video yet, but we will talk about the teams and dive into all that. So, ZZ, dude, the season is actually coming closer to an end. There are only 5 more events on the calendar before Worlds.
And actually, for some reason, the season is essentially over. If you are not traveling to an out of region event or to the North American Championships, as a LATAM player, as a player from Oceania, the only way of getting more championship points is through local events. So while we don't have the final standings just yet, the picture that we are seeing right now is very close to what we'll actually end up with.
It's actually staggering, especially like you mentioned, when you look at Latam and you look at how many points MartoGalde has accumulated. It's honestly mind blowing. But we're going to get to all that. I think we should start things off with Melbourne. So we talked a few weeks ago about how Godzilla was able to win a previous regional in Australia. This one was a little bit different, but there was kind of some echoes, kind of some similarities. And yeah, I really would just love to dive right into it because PvP Steve, Debbie Pebble, Dr. Trotter, and Fish on a Heater, along with Miss Mystic, and I'm sure a lot of other people off camera, put together this incredible community day or community stream. I'm so used to saying community and day together, I just mixed up. Community stream. I'm very, very grateful for Steve and the team for doing that. But I'd like to just talk about the teams here. We'll have the top cut up on screen if you are watching our YouTube version. So Pokemonemaker was able to win the tournament with Lapras, Claydol, Tinkaton, Shadow Drapion, as well as Cradilly and Talonflame. El Carvissimo. I always have to say that with like an Italian pitch, you know. El Carvissimo with with Azumarill, Claydol, and double Incinerate users in Shadow Typhlosion, Talonflame, with Furret and Superior finished second. So it's easy. Just looking at the teams here, this top cut. What are your initial thoughts? I think we could do an overview, and then I will dive in and talk about Pokemonemaker in the grand finals.
I think this is one of the more fascinating eight people top cuts that I've ever seen, honestly, and for a multitude of reasons. Because while obviously this is an Australian regional, only 50% of the top eight trainers are actually Australian. We have Rocket Claire with a team that looks fairly similar to what we'll see in Utrecht with the
Yeah.
core of Azumarill, Claydol, Ferret, a fire type, and then also a Corviknight. So definitely a meta call that a lot of top trainers made very similarly. And Rocket Claire, again, I feel like we've seen a little less of her recently. Maybe that's also because like there's just like not that many events in the Oceanic region, but definitely proving that she's one of the best with a top eight finish. And she's like kind of sandwiched in between a pair of brothers that we are all too familiar with. Because even though the stars of the show, Pokemonemaker from Japan and El Calvissimo Calvo from the United States of America, like those made up the grand finals. But going into the tournament, everybody's eyes were on Nighttime Clasher and Sustenance Eater. Like
Mhm.
Nighttime Clasher, obviously one of the most high profile names in the community. I think top five in the championship points ranking for North America. And Sustenance Eater, his little brother, really coming into his own recently and emulating the success his brother had. And again, they were running the same team. They finished
Mhm.
fifth and seventh place, respectively. It's always like the place that are tied within the top eight. It's two fifth places, two seventh places.
Yeah.
And yeah, Nighttime Clasher can still say that he's ahead of his brother, but it's getting closer and closer. They are running a very similar team, and it's also not too far off the team that they ran in Milwaukee when both top cut as well.
Mhm.
Nighttime Clasher coming in third. I think SustenanceEater finishing ninth in that regional. And yeah, they both rely on the on the regular for Relegator actually, on the Shadow Jumpluff, on the Tinkaton, on the Lapras, and then they fill the rest of the gaps in their team, not with the Diggersby, but with the Claydol this time, which seems a little more
Mhm.
reliable. And then the Shadow Drapion is also back, so
Yeah.
maybe not as afraid of the opposing Tinkaton anymore.
Yeah, Shadow Drapion, it really it reminds me a lot of its partner in crime, Azumarill. We think that the Pokemon is out of the meta, and then suddenly it storms right back in. And seeing the Shadow Drapion out of these teams, I believe 4 out of 8 did have the Scorpion on them. So that Pokemon, was pushed out of the meta by some other picks. It seemed like it was kind of fading in popularity, but then it comes right back. And yeah, shout out to Nighttime Clasher and Sustenance Eater for traveling all the way from I assume the US. I'm not even sure where NTC and Sustenance are these days, but they traveled a long, long way to get down to Melbourne. Rocket Claire, I mean, so awesome with Guzzlord and Corviknight. You and I have talked about this before. I made a YouTube video about a like Berserk style team that included those two. I think it's so sick when anyone plays Guzzlord, especially in a Tinkaton meta. So seeing her succeed was awesome. There are a couple of matches I wanted to talk about. Well, actually, mainly just one. And this was actually the losers finals between El Calvissimo and Fortois. One more note before I get into that. Valiant Vish finished fourth place. He made an awesome post on X. He said, I qualified for Worlds again. Didn't know if I would. Was kind of like semi-retired. Valiant Vish is like such a staple of the Australian community and the Oceania community in general. Really, really excited to see him qualify, and I can't wait to see him at Worlds. Um, but anyway, sorry for the segue. I wanted to shout out to Vish because he's sick. Losers finals. ZZ, I'm so sad that you weren't able to watch this broadcast yet because this losers finals was an absolute movie. What if I told you that El Calvissimo with double incinerate users took on double ground types in Clodsire and Unova Stunfisk, ran ABA incinerate in 2 games, and won the series?
Oh,
That
geez.
that's how this went, right? So
Like I see how like the Typhlosion is fine into the Clodsire. Like the Talonflame can be fine into. Wait, it wasn't a Clodsire. I'm just like seeing right now on the graphic. Like,
yeah.
was it? Is there one? Because I didn't watch the broadcast. I'm just seeing the
Mhm.
Dracovis graphic. The Dracovis graphic actually has a Claydol on there.
I'm sorry, Claydol, and
All
Unova
right.
Stunfisk. Uh, for some reason, I thought it was Clodsire. You're correct. So still double ground, I think, is the principle here. The mud slaps, the rock tombs, really so many
Yes.
obstacles, and the Unova Stunfisk is like extremely cracked at beating both Talonflame and Typhlosion. So I'll run you through the series real quick. It was 5 games, so much fun. So if you haven't seen the stream from PvP Steve, definitely go to his channel and check out at least this losers finals. Um, Game one was actually double fire versus double ground. Fort Wad goes ABA ground with his Claydol lead. Elcal just barely loses, is unable to bring it back. Game two, Fort Wad goes ABB ground with a Sableye in the lead. Elcal brings his Claydol and is superior to counter the double grounds in the back. Game three, Elcal hard loses the lead. Fort Wad pivots to Mandibuzz, which is actually a direct counter to the Claydol superior that Elcal ran in game number two. So, as you can imagine, he was able to take game 3. Game 4, Elcal goes Azu double fire, eats a sludge bomb on his Azumarill, swaps into Typhlosion, and Fortwa throws a discharge into the Typhlosion. It survives, and then Talon hangs on after a charge attack as well. Talonflame baits Fly versus Sableye and lands the Brave Bird to absolutely scrape that Sableye off of the field. Let's see. Yeah, Elcal putting it all on Typhlosion. Game 5, Elcal ABA Incinerate with Talonflame lead. He leads ABA Incinerate ZZ into Unova Stunfisk.
Oh no.
So he's forced to swap Furret, and he's met by a superior. Elcal sacrifices his Typhlosion, puts it all in the Talonflame. 1 HP Talon gets to back flies, and a single Sucker Punch versus double resisted Shadow Claw from Sableye leads to Elcal's victory. Double Incinerate wins it for him in that losers finals. Absolutely insane series to watch. I highly recommend it. Elcal was playing loose, fast, out of his mind, and really showing off that the Incinerate users can be flexible. Now, when we get to the grand finals, Pokemonemaker made history, and we will talk about this in a moment, but the grand finals was actually pretty direct. It was a 3-1 for Pokemonemaker. Um, Pokemonemaker actually, this is their second tournament in Australia, finished third place in Perth this season with Shadow Dragonite. They lost in round 2 of the tournament, won 7 rounds straight, and was eventually eliminated by 89 CGY Flames fan, I believe is how you say it. Elcal in the grand finals, I'm going to be candid. He was just totally overwhelmed by the Shadow Drapion. Shadow Drapion spamming the Aqua Tails swept his team in games 2, 3, and 4. It was the last Pokemon remaining. It KO'd at least 2, if not 3, of Elcal's picks. So Incinerate was great for him. It worked all tournament long, but Pokemonemaker was just more flexible, more agile, faster, and was able to outpace and defeat Elcal. So that was a really fun finals to watch.
Yeah. So looking at the El Calvissimo team, again, we find the core of 4 that we already called out in the Rocket Clear team, where there's the Azu, the Furret, the Claydol, and then this time not only 1 fire type, but 2 fire types. So
Mm-hmm.
again, I personally think that this is like, we talk about cores of 2 a lot, but I think this combination of just 4 Pokemon that fill certain roles on a team, that has been really, really strong for the entirety of the Might and Mastery season, actually. Because I remember when back in March, we were still figuring out what was good, what wasn't. Um, I had those 3 non-fire types alongside a Skeledirge in a in a little bit of a community tournament. It was really, really strong even back in the day. And then like the last 2 are always some flex picks in a way. So Calvo going for the superior Talonflame core, which in itself is very strong, albeit sometimes not as flexible. And it does make sense that Pokemonemaker was the end of him in the grand finals, because that's also the exact same person that originally knocked Calvo down to the losers. So sometimes you just run into a team that you cannot beat, and if you have a top tier trainer with a Shadow Drapion that essentially beats everything on your team that isn't called Claydol,
Mm-hmm.
that's just what can happen, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it was kind of like the antidote versus the poison, so to speak. Speaking of poison, I actually opened up the stream and I think that there was actually an error on the Dracoviz graphic because I'm looking here at the Elcal versus Fortwa matchup. I knew I wasn't hallucinating, ZZ. There's a Clodsire on this team and on the screen, so maybe it was just a discrepancy with
I
Dracoviz. But
heard you mentioning the Azu tanking a sludge bomb, and I was like
yeah,
really
yeah,
curious
and
whether
you were like,
like,
what?
because none of the others will be able to throw that, and you are not hallucinating sludge bombs, I would assume.
Yeah, yeah. So I surely hope not. But if I do that, we have bigger problems. But no, it might have just been a discrepancy with Dracoviz. So they get things right 99.99% of the time. But
Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah. We're very grateful for all the service they provide to the competitive community.
Yeah. I wish I could show. Maybe we can do like a behind the scenes thing one time. I'll show all the tabs that I've opened. It's like spreadsheet, a Leak Duck event page, and then 5 Dracoviz team graphic pages is what I have open here. So yeah, we're really, really grateful. This was a historic event because Pokemonemaker, as you said, not only knocked down Elcal, not only was this his second event in Australia, but he actually made history being the first trainer from the TPC region to win a TPCi event, which leads to an auto qualification for Worlds. He doesn't have to go through the whole gauntlet of battling at a Pokemon Center, doing an online qualifier, attending playoffs, and placing highly in the playoffs. He doesn't have to do any of that. He actually has an auto qualification right now after winning a TPCi event. So, I mean, this was huge, and I feel like remind me who was in the grand finals versus Godzilla. It was Pokemonemaker, right?
Was it Choose with a lot of the O's? I think it was
Let me
another
check.
Japanese player. Like Pokemon Maker, I think came third in Perth,
Perth.
um,
Okay, that's right.
if I'm not
You're right. You're
mistaken.
right. It was actually Brisbane Godzilla versus Choose, and I believe Choose is also from Japan, as you mentioned. So again, these TPC trainers got really close several times, and Pokemon Maker was actually the first to break through and win the whole event, which is honestly historic. And that's only the first historic thing that we're going to talk about on the show today. So, um, again, Melbourne was a very impressive event. It was a 1 day tournament. Steve not only did a Saturday community stream for Melbourne for Go, but he also turned around and did a VGC stream on Sunday, so he could broadcast Championship Sunday for the video game series. So he's doing it all. He's a do it all Aussie is what I'll say. Um, but yeah, an incredible tournament in Melbourne. I'm not sure if there's anything else you wanted to add. I'm really excited to see Pokemon Maker attending Worlds, and I am excited to see Valiant Vish as well qualify. El Cal is so close to that first tournament win. He's been on a hockey stick trajectory of improvement. I cannot wait to see what he does
He's
next.
also a
Maybe
trainer that
at
really
NXT.
enjoys competing in Australia. Like we have the Europeans that occasionally make their way
Yeah.
across the pond to compete in North America. We have some people who like to do it vice versa. I feel like Calvo is like the one guy from North America that we can expect to show up at least one Australian regional season. And yeah, this time it really paid dividends, just coming so close with such a unique strategy. And yeah, just like found his master in Shadow Drapion, but he's not the first to fall to that creature. So
Exactly.
yeah, this was in a way the culmination of a lot of storylines within the Australian competitive scene. I really like to see the Shadow Blastoise as well, making top eight twice, both for Vish and
Let's go.
for Gon. So yeah, maybe we haven't really had a Blastoise threatening, like really making a title challenge yet, but there's still
Mhm.
people who believe, and I think it's like a very safe Pokemon. So maybe there's still some unexplored potential, but other
Mhm.
than that, I feel like we can move continents and maybe take a deeper look into what happened in Utrecht in the Netherlands, where we needed to find a successor to Martijn and Eloquence, who last year took it all with a Giratina origin. This time he brought a Rayquaza. He didn't make it into day two, but apparently there's some. It's not even a new champion, but like a champion of old who just rises above the competition every time this spring.
Yeah, I agree. Martin is just such a character because not only is he going and competing against some of Europe's best. If you look at this top cut, it's like a who's who of Europe's most talented trainers, all except for Aziz Wireless. I don't know who the heck that is, but
Never heard
but
of
it's so
them.
funny how he basically goes into these tournaments with one arm behind his back, and he's like, I'm gonna play Rayquaza, or I'm gonna play a Palkia or whatever. And I think he made a post about it. He said 5 versus 6 is pretty difficult, and I agree with him. It can be tricky. Although I did pop into his stream one time, and I did see a Rayquaza eat a Bone Club from Alolan Marowak. So be that what it is, it can tank a couple of moves. So Martine, come on, man, you gotta get day two of the Rayquaza next time. But yeah, I'd love to talk about this tournament. This is also historic, maybe on a smaller level, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is Corviknight's first gold medal, which is super exciting. And there's a lot to talk about with these teams, especially teams like Zephy Mastix. I mean, what the heck?
It is Corviknight's first gold medal, and is also my boy Furret's first gold medal. So all the Furret doubters, they are in shambles. They know nothing about this game. Furret is a great Pokemon. It can win tournaments. It has won two tournaments even. We will get to the other one later on. But yeah, I really liked Nickname's team. Maybe that is because I ran essentially an identical one in that same tournament. Piloting it a little worse, falling to Maximilian P. twice. Once on day one, then a second time on day two, essentially ending in fifth position. And yeah, just like really getting outmaneuvered by Maxi in some very neutral matches where he recognized that my Claydol looked fairly safe for me, but that gave him the opportunity to target it with his water types, Azumarill and Lapras,
Yeah.
essentially just overwhelming the Claydol, the Typhlosion that I ran for a lot of my games actually. And yeah, that's how my tournament run ended. But yeah, Maxi made it all the way to the grand finals, challenging the Stockholm regional champion in nickname 29585. We just call him nickname. I think we're
Yeah.
close like that. Um, but yeah, like I think this is the first time we've had a back-to-back regional champion in Europe. There was the Sevilla
Mm.
event between Stockholm and Utrecht, but Nickname didn't compete in that. That was the one event where it was essentially um, I won't call it like a bigger local, but it was very heavy on Spanish and Portuguese players with only very few competitors from the rest of the continent. So Nickname decided to skip that and instead just like win back to back events that he actually attended. And
Mm.
this now puts him at three regional titles with
Wow.
Bremen all the way back in 2022 and now Stockholm and Utrecht. And that also means that he is, I think, like if you count the senior world championship title of Emmy Wedel, we have three Europeans with three titles, but in terms
Mm.
of masters division titles, only Colin Six equals that tally. So
Wow.
yeah, I was like already hinting on social media that that nickname might be in contention for like a European GOAT debate with that honor form. I feel like it's very difficult to um, get around that at this point because he has been the dominant Might and Mastery player on this
Mhm.
continent. And yeah, he's been doing what we already called out in Melbourne, and leveraging the Azumarill Claydol fire type Furret combination and
Uh-huh.
combining that with Corviknight for a very first gold medal and the Shadow Jump Love with double flying moveset.
It's incredible when you look at the overall teams because between his two championships, and this is just, I want everyone to just realize like how diverse this Might and Mastery season has been. Because between Stockholm and Utrecht, Nickname was able to win those tournaments with 11 unique Pokemon. In Stockholm, he did Shadow Annihilate, Azumarill, Guzzlord, Lapras, Swalot, if you remember. Everyone remembers Swalot? And Talonflame. And then in Utrecht, he won with Azumarill, the only shared Pokemon across the two teams, Claydol, Corviknight, Furret, Shadow Jump Bluff, and Shadow Typhlosion. So again, these tournaments are literally 2 months apart, and the meta is wildly different. Um, it's just really really incredible to see what nickname's able to accomplish here. In terms of the bracket run, he did have a couple of really nice wins. Defeated Arrow Bubble 2-0, JBG Winston, Cookshack, Maxi, a Mind Joke, and then did lose that first grand finals to Maxi before winning the reset. We'll talk about the grand finals in detail soon, but what an incredible run by him. And yeah, it's really amazing, right? Because competitive Pokemon Go is still so young. Starting off in 2022, we've had 2 or 3 years to kind of establish who our goats are. But then you see up and coming trainers like Nickname, and you're like, man, we might have to change our perspective a little bit here. A couple of other interesting teams here in the top cut. Zephy Mastix, I'm going to come back to him. I really, really admire that Zephy loves that Gastrodon, has committed to it in multiple tournaments, brought it again here in Utrecht. Double ground Gastrodon Clodsire with Dusclops, which I thought was like a dinosaur that nobody played, but apparently Zephy's finding a way to make it work. The EU special of Talonflame and Chargebug and Furret as well to appease Z's Wireless, I assume. Cookshack running Dugong of all things with a Golisopod. We had Elephant Flashe, which is a name that I recognize from all the way back in 2022 with a pretty conventional team. ZZ, dude, you got to trust in EU to break the mold every single time they get the opportunity. Fatalist next finished within the top 16 with Hisuian Electrode. What was bro cooking?
Like he made a winner's side day two. Like this is incredible. Like, but honestly, like if you look at the different regions, like there was like a lot of variety in Australia already. I think we did display that on the screen for our YouTube audience.
Right.
With Pokemon such as Superior or Mandibus or Unova Stunfisk, none of which really played a role in Europe. What is special about the European circuit, in my opinion, is the relative lack of Tinkaton as well. Because if you
Mm,
look at the top eight, you only have three teams that feature the Tinkaton, and two of them are at the very bottom of the top eight, with Palasha and Elefantflasche um, managing to squeeze in that prestigious top bracket that actually yields a good amount of championship points compared to a mere top 16. But yeah, I feel like the rise in Typhlosion that we predicted a little bit on our last podcast, that really gave the Tinkaton teams a very hard time.
mm.
And yeah, like out of the top eight, six of them had a fire type on their team. So we were definitely Tinkaton hunting in Europe.
I agree. And it's actually really, really interesting as well because I battled Kufia in the Joust tournament. I believe it was the May Joust hosted by Lundberger and her team. And after our match, Kufia actually, we were talking in DMs. I don't think he minds me saying it because he was actually correct about this. But we were talking about Tinkaton and Azumarill, and I said, I'm in this like back and forth debate with Tostel and some other people about Azumarill's prevalence in the meta and whether it's going to leak back in. And he actually told me he believed personally that there would be more Azumarill than Tinkaton in the day two in Utrecht. And guess what? He was on the money. I believe it was like 8-6 were the numbers, if I'm not mistaken. Last time I counted them, and or maybe yeah, I think 8-6. Anyways, yeah, Azumarill finding its way back into the meta and winning the tournament with nicknames. So the Water Bunny's not done yet. And I think that you actually reinforced that when we battled in the Joust and you played Azumarill for it. I was like, dang it, ZZ, you got to move on from the meta. Don't throw these old tools at me. You have to get with the new stuff. But it proves that sometimes old is best. A couple other interesting things I wanted to touch on really briefly. Bats 893 with Shadow Dusclops, Shadow Galarian Wheezing, and Unova Stunfisk. And then you got like this mix. What I'm noticing here is that we've got a lot of Shadow, Jumpluff, and Malamar pairings. That seems to be like one of the core duos. Sometimes you see Shadow, Jumpluff, and Furret as another likely pair. But as an overall composition, I've kind of like narrowed this down into a formula, right? You and I talk about team building from time to time. I'll just give you my theory real quick. I'd love to hear your reaction, and then we can talk about grands and everything else. Slot one, water. That's either going to be Azumarill or Lapras in most cases. Slot two is 90% of the time it's ground. It's either going to be Diggersby, Claydol, maybe a Unova Stunfisk. Slot three seems to be the steel slot these days, whether it's Tinkaton, Corviknight, Alolan Sandslash. We've also seen a few of those as well. Slot four is like a flex slot. You might see a fire type like Typhlosion. You might see a Feraligatr. You might even see like a Golisopod, or in the case of bats, a Galarian Weezing there. Slot five is grass, whether that's Superior, Jumpluff, Cradily. That's really what I see the most there. And then slot six is another flex slot. And that typically is going to be your Malamar, your Furret, your Shadow Drapion, or maybe even a Gliscod, like I mentioned before. That can also fit into that slot. I don't know what you think about that, but that's kind of like what the teams overall, that's kind of like the formula that I'm picking up on. I don't know if you agree.
I think you're pretty much right on the money, and I especially like how you try to describe what you mean by flex slots,
Mm-hmm.
because you mentioned the Feraligatr, the Typhlosion, the Golisopod. All of those have in common that they are on the squishier side when it comes to stat product and overall durability. While they're also they have this nice pacing where they get to a pretty powerful charge attack in only 10 turns. So you have those Pokemon that can really apply pressure to an opponent, that occasionally can function as a safe swap, or that you can play for energy with. And those Pokemon, like you can really only afford one or two of those on your team because they're typically shield hogs. They don't really enjoy being left unprotected. But yeah, this is definitely like a genre of Pokemon that sees a lot of play. Whereas the other type of flex pick is one where you maybe want to utilize the power of stat modification a little bit, where
Mhm.
you have this very powerful superpower on Malamar that necessitates you swapping out of a matchup, or you have the Furret, which really wants to stay in a matchup for a really long time to really make the most of its boosted sucker punches after a Trailblaze. So, when and how you swap with those Pokemon and how you utilize the energy is really, really important to get the most out of them.
Mhm.
And yeah, I feel like making the most of those types of Pokemon is really crucial um, to really get an advantage, because just throwing your relatively safe Azumarill, Lapras, and Claydol into a matchup, I feel like most players can do that reliably, but mastering those more technical Pokemon like the
Mhm.
Typhlosion, like the Furret, also the Corviknight, which has been described as an awkward pick by many, has been described as the MVP by nickname in this tournament. And
Wow.
um, so you mentioned Koifie earlier.
Mhm.
Also, I would consider him a friend of mine. We did play obviously in day three of UIC. We met first at Worlds last year. He's really one of the up and coming trainers in the European region. And I think the way this tournament winning team actually came to pass may have been like a little bit of a game of telephone when I did play Koifie in one of the practice tournaments that are hosted in the Candle Cult Discord channel by Inadequance and by his many hosts. Um, and we had like similar ideas of how to really target down the Tinkaton to enable other Pokemon such as Furret to really do stuff. And I played him with an iteration of this team where I hadn't had the Jumpluff yet, but instead tried out the Ariados, not necessarily because I
Mhm.
think it's better than the Jumpluff, but because I really wanted to try out Ariados after I saw that it can beat Tinkaton if you go straight Trailblaze in the ones and twos. So that was just like a little bit of a test run, but I think Koifia essentially took that core five, immediately saw that Ariados is kind of stupid and he should much rather run a jump love, and then shared that tag with nickname. And if you look at the
Uh,
graphics that Martijn put out after the last week of practice ahead of Utrecht, there's like 7 Typhlosions that want to practice tournament. So
Woo!
um, like
Wow.
the proof was kind of in the pudding, but people have not adapted yet. So the team was super, super well positioned. I found that myself in my own run. I just played a little more sloppy than I usually expect of myself. Still making fifth place just goes to show how strong that team was. Whereas nickname, obviously, he was locked in. He's been locked in for months at this point. Especially his Corviknight play, he really dared to bring that Steel Bird. Whereas I chickened out every time I saw a fire type on my opponent's team, which was most of the time. Um, so yeah, I feel like the mastery of those awkward Pokemon, those Pokemon that require you to really know your damage ranges, know when to aggressively swap. I think that really
Mhm.
makes the difference in this meta. And some people are saying Europeans play too RPS. I disagree. I think we actually kind of play the opposite of RPS at times. So yeah, if you want to showcase of that, just rewatch the Utrecht special event because that was a
Mm.
lot of great gameplay to watch.
It's really staggering as well when you look at Nickname's team and you see Azumarill, Claydol, Shadow Typhlosion, Shadow Jumpluff, and Furret. And I'm looking at those five Pokemon. Again, I didn't mention the Corviknight, but if you look at those five Pokemon and you think, Drapien's going to deal super effective poison stings to Azumarill, can hang in even shield matchups. A crunch debuff, it can be really devastating in that matchup. Up energy against Claydol, you can crunch Aquatail for the KO. Against a Typhlosion, you can probably land a single Aquatail and then poison sting down in some situations. You're going to do a lot of damage to the Shadow Jumpluff. The Furret, two crunches, and that's all she wrote on that matchup. I'm like, man, as much as we change the meta, it's almost like this revolving wheel of coming back to these really powerful picks. So seeing the teams here just on paper, it makes nickname's victory in the grand finals even more notable because Maxi did have the Shadow Drapion, he had the Malamar, he had the Talonflame, Azumarill, Lapras, Claydol. I mean, so many obstacles to that Shadow Typhlosion. I mean, it had to face down two water types, a Claydol Mudslap user, and an Aquatail Drapion. And if the Malamar's up energy, then that's also a matchup that generally, it will outpace because they pace at the same rate with the Thunder Punch and the Foul Play. So such a difficult matchup. Um, you alluded to this when you said heartbreak in the intro. Should we talk about the grand finals between Nickname and Maxi?
I think we have to. And I think we should
Yeah.
probably also start with the moment that we have alluded to and that people have been talking about, which is in the very last moments of the decisive game 5 of the already reset bracket. Like, whoever wins this game is going to be our Utrecht special event champion.
Mm.
And Maxi actually had the sparkling aria loaded on his Lapras, which would have taken out the Claydol on nickname's side. But because Maxi lost track of energy, he decided to overfarm against the Claydol, and he did it not only in a way that he would still be able to like do a few more side waves and then throw the sparkling aria. He actually miscounted by one and lets the Claydol get to a Rock Tomb when the Azumarill was only at like 2 bubbles and would have needed 4 more
Two.
to actually reach the play rough, which would have been essentially even pacing with the Lapras. And because the Azumarill was already very low health, even a Sparkling Aria would have knocked out. So Maxi had the move loaded. He maneuvered himself into the perfect position. He made all the right calls. He reset the bracket from the loser side, coming back after Nickname already took him down in winner semis. Um, just to miscount in the exact worst moment. And I like after that happened, the camera obviously panned to Nickname because he won a tournament, right?
Mhm.
But all that Nickname could do was just shake his head in disbelief because he knew that the Lapras was at the move. He was fully expecting to lose this game and therefore the
Yeah.
tournament. And yeah, he was not really in the most celebratory of moods after he saw like a co-competitor. Like, everybody is just really good friends in EU from what I have experienced, and I feel like he felt for Maxi more than he was happy for himself in that moment.
I agree. You can see the emotion on stage. I mean, as soon as Nickname triggers the Rock Tomb, you immediately see Maxi like facepalm. He's like, "Oh my god, what just happened?" And then you see Nickname like look across the table, look at the crowd, look down, like he's doesn't know, like he just can't even process what's happening. The game 5 actually looked really perilous there for Nickname from the very beginning. So, like you pointed out, game 5 grand finals reset. This is the one game to decide the Utrecht Special Championship champion. I guess is how we would say it. Nickname leads Claydol into Azumarill, immediately swaps his Furret into the Azumarill. Nickname lets his Furret get KO'd. He comes in with his own Azumarill, tries to farm down the Talonflame with bubbles, but needs to shield a fly. Um, at this point, his Azumarill, I believe, is really weak. Or no, I think his Azumarill is still healthy. But basically, at this midpoint of the game, it was Nickname's Claydol versus a two shield double water backline of Maxi, which was the Azumarill and Lapras, the two remaining Pokemon. Not only that, but Nickname's Claydol was consistently losing charge tech priority to the opposing Claydol, and his Azumarill was consistently losing the charge tech priority to Maxi's Azumarill. So not only was he at like a typing disadvantage, a team comp disadvantage, a shield disadvantage, he's also at a charge attack priority disadvantage. And you could see him shaking his head. Nickname is a very emotional, very expressive player on stage. Every time something went wrong, he'd like, fidget in his chair. And if you're watching the YouTube version, you can see my Nickname impression. He's like, he's like not sure what's going on. He's very like squirmy. But then the last line of my notes is in all caps. Maxi loses count with Claydol versus Lapras. GG's. And watching it back, you were exactly right. I actually watched it back this morning. Azumarill for Nickname had 2 bubbles. He was nowhere near the play rough. Maxi had the sparkling aria honestly no reason to overcharge or overfarm there. Just throw the move, side wave down. That's the game, right? Or at least get to another sparkling aria against Izumro and win the game. Um, I'm sure that as a player, this is something that Maxi is going to reflect on. I think he had a really good demeanor in the post grand finals interview when Marcus asked, "How are you feeling?" And Maxi said, "Honestly, I'm really happy that I finished second." And I think that is absolutely the right mindset because as a competitor, as someone who prides himself on competing and working really hard and scrimming and being that guy in that moment, it can eat at a person to have a mistake like that in the grand finals. It can really eat your confidence if you allow it to. So yeah, Maxi. I was told, right? I watched some clips of the stream. The EU streams usually start at like 2 a.m. for me, so it's a little bit late. But I watched some clips of the VOD. I saw a Lapras Skullbash, a 2 HP Shadow Drapion. I saw a Malamar Superpower, another weak Pokemon. Maxi was having a good time in Utrecht this past weekend. He was having some fun on stage, and yeah, it was just really funny to kind of juxtapose the two roles, right? You had Maxi, who was obviously playing a cut above everyone else besides nickname, BMing when he had the chance, and then in the final seconds of the grand finals reset, where he was a half second from being a champion, he flounders, and that can be really really difficult to process. So I hope Maxi's proud of what he accomplished. I hope that he had fun. I hope that he is confident in himself going into the next event, and I hope he's very very happy with his result because it's really telling, ZZ, like how people take that kind of moment. They can either
Yeah.
rise above it or they can just let it, destroy their confidence.
So from how I've experienced Maxi after that moment, he's really been doing a good job of not letting that moment define him. And if he
Good.
takes a step back and just looks at his tournament performance, this was his strongest performance of all time. He did prove that he's a champion, like a champion's caliber player, even though he's not a champion yet, even when he had the chance to. It
Hmm.
is his first top four since Barcelona 2023.
Yeah.
It's not the 2024 season, but September 2023. Um, so yeah, even though obviously those last few moments have been fairly rough, um, it I think the main takeaway of this is that he can do it. Um,
Yeah.
and the next time he just needs to keep the focus up until the last final moment. And like
Hmm.
you cannot come closer to the goal than this one. Like it was it was so heartbreaking to watch, but
Yeah.
I still think that this just reinforces a competitor's desire to compete because
Hmm.
as somebody who was like Europe's silver guy this season, falling just short, you just you just want to do it better the next time. So
Hmm.
this is not the last we've seen of Maxi. Um, it's definitely well within qualification range for Worlds as well. Let's see whether he makes it to Anaheim. I would love to see him there. Because yeah, like he's been around the community for a long, long time. Yeah, we did actually do a lucky trade on stage before our day one matchup. I gave him a Palkia that got immediately deleted. I received a shiny Spinda with 15, 13, 15 IVs, so maybe that is getting built. But yeah,
Not
we
bad.
essentially got all of that friendship plus the lucky status just from playing each other at like 3 a.m. local time in GBL, and we have been doing that for years. And I hope we'll just keep doing that, and we'll see Maxi around at more of these because honestly, it's just always a great time to be around. And yeah, I love to see competitors who maybe had a little bit of a rough stretch competitively have another breakthrough tournament. And it's not just Maxi. Like honestly, his entire like friends and teammates
Yeah.
have been really excelling. Like if you look at third place, where a Mind Joke has piloted the OutOfPoket nighttime pleasure team as like the best Tinkaton of the tournament. I feel like Mind Joke is another of those candidates who like in the interview after the tournament he said it's like a little bit sweet because Obviously, it's my best tournament in a long, long time, but all my medals are bronze. I would really like a different color. Um, but I just love that some of those staples of the scene, Zephy Mastix as well, another trainer who faced nickname in his Bremen run as like
Hmm.
the last obstacle. That was 2022. Like all of those players have really been around, and we've been talking about how Pokemon Go essentially feels as if it has problems attracting new players, and we always call out if a new player really bursts onto the scene, makes a name for themselves, and we love to reinforce that and want people to keep at it. But there's players out there that have been competing at these events for like 4 years at this point, essentially. And
Hmm.
just seeing them still around, them still excelling, that really brings me joy because it just means that there's reasons to stick with this game, even though there is a lot of frustration involved as well, be it in terms of results, be it in terms of game performance, which was excellent in Utrecht, by the way.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it feels like this was an event where a lot of names that we have known for a long time actually were showing what they were still capable of.
I wish that the EU folks could send some of that high quality game functionality over to NA. Please do that, please, because there are always so many disputes in NA. But that's neither here nor there. I don't mean to get off topic. I looked at Maxi's profile on X, formerly known as Twitter, and he has written in here IGN, EU Emperors, and then the third note in his bio is season 4 Sylph Arena top 8. And I actually looked it up. According to Wikipedia, season 4 was back in 2022 is when that season started. So this just again reinforces your point that a lot of these trainers have been competing, have been grinding the game for a long time, and then they have a breakthrough moment, which kind of spontaneously happens. And I think you can probably agree with this. I think on my own personal experience, I agree with this. It's kind of like um, having a successful run in competitive Pokemon Go, and I'm sure this goes for the other games as well. Is kind of like having the most complete run that you possibly can, getting as close to that 100% in every area marker that you can, whether it's having the right team comp, knowing the counts, knowing the matchups, reading your opponent correctly, having the right teams of 3 going into the matches. And then the component that we don't talk about enough is actually focus. And I feel like that focus component, that final piece of the puzzle that Maxi did not quite have at 100%, that is what really let him down. So, I mean, hell, there's so many trainers that would, give anything to be at 80%, 85%, and consistently top cut. But to be at 98% like Maxi
Yeah,
was, and to not quite win it, I mean, again, we're going to see how he adjusts, and I'm glad to hear he's doing well. And this
especially
is,
because like he outmaneuvered me in both sets that we played. Like he was like waiting turns to deny me catches, like that
ooh,
kind of try hard gameplay.
ooh,
And yeah, maybe maybe he was like thinking like, okay, I just want to beat the ZZ guy, and then afterwards I'll take it a little more chill. But
mhm.
nah. I'm
There's
not taking it personally, not at all. No, no, no.
Okay. Good to know. Um, there's one more thing I wanted to say, which is the flip side of this. Um, and I don't know if you experience like if you got any of these vibes at the venue, or if you kind of like feel like people are talking this way back in various Discord chats, wherever it might be. But I don't want for a moment for Nickname to feel like he didn't deserve the championship, because I feel like there's also the other side of that coin where Nickname didn't have the right team going into game 5. He got outplayed by Maxi, outmaneuvered, like you said, in several different situations. And I don't want the second place finisher's mistake to take away from the gold medalist victory. If you know what I'm saying. Um, I hope nobody's talking bad about Nickname and saying he didn't deserve it, because if they are, you're a jerk. If you're listening and you said that about Nickname, you're a jerk because he earned it, right?
I think Maxi himself made that very clear and very explicitly congratulated Nickname for what was just like a very dominant tournament performance. Again, like they met on the winner's side before the finals, and Nickname took that set from what we have identified as a little bit of a team comp disadvantage, given how strong, especially Maxi's Drapion looks in that matchup. So yeah, honestly, you can take nothing away from nickname. And one thing that I also want to point out is that most tournament runs have at least one, typically a couple of situations where the eventual winner of the event could well drop to losers or even get knocked out entirely if the opponent just is slightly more aware of a certain situation, doesn't mess up at a certain point in the battle. And rarely ever is it as prominent as in the very final moment of the last game of the grand finals reset. So that was just like very visible. But this
Yeah.
is by no means different from essentially any other championship run. I was like, again, like I I peaked in 2023 when I won that Barcelona special event, and I watched back that run after I managed to win that championship, and I identified three moments where I could have just lost it all, or at least dropped down if my opponent just kept track of my energy or of my health
Yep.
range and
Yep.
just really executed a little more cleanly. And I think every champion can look back at something like that. And at the end of the day, being the person at a tournament that makes the least amount of mistakes is a quality in and of itself. And again, I described nickname as locked in previously. Um, yeah, nobody could take him down at the end of the day. And Maxi had this very impressive bracket reset where he really made a bunch of great line calls. I thought, especially his talent flame, he utilized really, really well
Hmm.
because obviously there's some really annoying matchups in the fairly safe Azumarill on name side, in the Typhlosion, which just outpaces. So you have to really be careful where you position your talent flame and how often you use it, but I thought Maxi made some great calls with that. So yeah, like it was really a back and forth of two evenly matched players, and even though this feels like it was Maxi's to lose, I just think that we had two people in the grand finals that were worthy of that championship title, and now it's nickname again, and this is like the second time in a row. I still think this is like a fun story as well, right? Like if you
Yeah.
are just that guy for two events back to back,
Mhm.
um, I think like how can you say that somebody who won two tournaments in a row doesn't deserve it? Like nobody can say that, and I'm pretty sure nobody has said that just yet, or at least
Good.
I have not been made aware of
Good. And if you have said it in whatever Discord chat it was, go take it
that.
back. Go take it back if you're listening. I really appreciate you mentioned Talonflame. I have my notes here several times that the Talonflame Shadow Drapion duo was very strong for Maxi. We talked about Corviknight getting his first gold medal, but I got some bad news for you, ZZ. Nickname brought it twice in the grand finals first set, and in both of those games, he lost. He has a 0% win rate in the grand finals with Corviknight because in both games it got lined up against Maxi's Flame Charge Fly Talonflame, and it absolutely got burned to a crisp. Scorched earth is how I would describe it. But again, cheers to nickname Maxi, our other top four, a mind joke, and Zephy, as well as all of our very talented trainers. There's one more event in EU that's going to be Bologna. So I hope to see Europe's best there, continuing this trend of spicy teams, insane plays, and great storylines. But we talked about Melbourne, a TPC trainer making history, winning a TPCi event. We talked about Utrecht, where Nickname became the first EU trainer to win back to back events. Now we're going to go to an even bigger step in history when we head down to Santiago in LATAM. Um, I mean, this is a Goliath feat. This is a Herculean accomplishment by Argentina's the pride of Argentina, I should say, MartoGalde.
I think this may be a feat that will not ever be repeated, because MartoGalde, third place world's finisher, um, LAIC champion, he won his first championship, no, his fourth, both with F, championship title in the 2025 season, which is just incredible. Like, like if you get like one championship title in your PvP career, you can already be so proud. Like you'll
Yeah,
forever be in the history books. Marto is the history book. Like he is all the
yeah,
pages at this point. Um,
exactly.
Marto making trophy moves.
exactly, and he's doing it with his very favorite jump love.
Yes,
Um, with a team that somewhat resembles Nickname's championship team, but there's some key differences in that the steel type of choice is not the Corviknight, but the
mhm.
Tinkaton, which essentially features on just about everything in that Santiago top card. I think only two
Except
teams are
two.
missing the Tinkaton. Um,
Exactly.
and the water type of choice, which matches up slightly better into Tinkaton, therefore maybe a good call, is the Lapras instead of the Azumarill, which obviously, while the Psywave damage is resisted, the neutral Sparkling Aria can make that a favorable matchup against the Tink for the Lapras in some situations.
hmm So we're gonna have the team graphic up on screen for Santiago. Unfortunately, for this event, there was not a stream. I did come across a post from Justin Muniz. I wanted to read that. I believe Maxi retweeted it and reminded me. Justin Muniz says another crazily good LATAM regional with no stream. We only had one TV with some matches being streamed to the spectators. It's so frustrating to watch many of the best players in the world giving PvP classes and not being streamed to everyone. So, just Minas, I mean, I agree with you. I know for a fact that ZZ agrees with you. We've said this multiple times on the show. Um, whatever power we have, you ZZ as a perennial top cut, competitor, one of Europe's best leading minds. Myself as a commentator and my connection with TPCi, whatever pull we have, we are using it to try and get these tournament streams. So hopefully, just mean as we have broadcasts for these. Um, I say all of that to say we're not going to be able to talk in depth about these matches, but we can talk about the teams and talk about the bracket. So when you look at Marto's team, what really strikes me here is that he has Lapras, Claydol, Tinkaton, Furret, Shadow Jumpluff, and Shadow Typhlosion. And all these Pokemon we mentioned already on this show, probably 5 times in this episode alone. But this particular combination of these six, I wasn't able to find this on any of the tournaments that we covered for this episode, whether it was Melbourne, whether it was Utrecht, whether it was Taiwan or Thailand. I wasn't able to find this particular set of six on any of them. So again, maybe finding new ways to engineer this. What was serendipitous about this grand finals as well is that back in 2024, when Niantic hosted a Mexico City qualifier tournament, it was this same matchup of Javier V20 taking on MartoGalde. And I remember being there at the venue and watching Marto with his Charizard, Guzzlord, Tooth and Claw, high octane, high offense team take on Javier's Gligar, Whiscash, Vigoroth team. Yes, it was back in that meta. And Javier was just able to just weather the storm and take anything that Marto threw at him and win it. So for these two to match up again in Santiago was absolutely poetic. This time, Marto did get the better of him, and it looks like he did it from the winner's side of the bracket. So, Marto, I believe here I'm looking. Oh, I'm looking at the group stage here on Challenge. Here's the final stage. Yeah, Marto able to take a 3-1 over Javier after Javier V20 won a nail biter 3-2 against LND Hardjeff, LNDS Hardjeff. So one of Brazil's best taking on Javier, taking on Marto. I mean, this was like a LATAM clash. I heard that everyone was there besides the Mexicans, easy. Everyone was there from LATAM, is
Oh,
what I
I
was
think
told.
there also has been a bracket reset, right? Like Javier was actually like took the first set off Marto,
Oh,
if I'm
you're
not
right.
mistaken.
You're right.
And yeah, like the people that got to watch that one TV that they had at the venue, they actually got a show. And like if you look at that top three, with LND as Rajev, obviously essentially Brazilian's motto, like the Brazilian motto in a way, with like an IC title, with like regional titles, with like really a bunch of accolades, both in his home region and at international events. Then Javier again, like a rematch against Marto, another regional champion, probably the most decorated Peruvian player, and
Mm-hmm.
then obviously the pride of Argentina, MartoGalde himself. I really love that representation. I guess like the Chileans will be a little sad that they don't feature in the top four, even though they
Yeah.
do have a strong top eight showing with Emilio, with Swagron, and with Steps, who all made
Mhm.
that top eight bracket. But yeah, like this, like imagine this being streamed, like all of those
Oh,
big names with those really like there's ferrets everywhere. There's a Shadow Typhlosion. I would love to watch that. I could watch that all day.
yeah.
So yeah, I really do hope that in the future we'll actually get to talk about what happened during that bracket reset. Like how did Mato
Mhm.
fight back after Javier figured him out in the first half? I would really love to watch that. Unfortunately, we are left with the teams with the Dracovis graphic, where we do see what is that on the desynced team in Top Cut.
That is a normal type not named ferret, and it is of the mammalian variety. You might compare it to a mongoose if you were talking about real world animals. Desynced with his signature Shadow Quagsire and Linoon, and I don't even know what the moveset was. Let me see if I can find out if it was Grass Knot Thunder or what the heck it was.
I feel like Thunder is like the main reason to use it because otherwise you would probably just better off trailblazing with your Sucker
Mm,
Puncher for it. But I know that my brother made like a YouTube video with that, and this thing like kind of is known to make Top Cut with Pokemon that otherwise are only found in YouTube videos. Um, Again, like this time, not making top eight just barely, but it was one Pokemon that did stand out to me. Another one
yeah.
would probably be the Galarian Corsola on the team of Helios X 1997, which
Mhm.
is a name that we haven't seen as much before, I would say. But actually breaking into that top four alongside three of the greats, another Argentinian, bringing back that coral Pokemon. We thought it
Yeah.
was dead. Apparently, it's still alive. I feel like that's also the lore of it. Um,
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
but yeah, really interesting
It
to bring that into a ferret meta and make it top four.
it looks like the Linoon from Desynced was running Swift and Grass Knot. I believe that
Oh,
Niantic tried to give it Trailblaze, but it actually can't learn it in the main series, if my
oh
memory
God.
serves correct.
Yeah, I think I
So
remember that.
so it's using the other grass move. But to your point about him basically bringing YouTube videos into real life, this season, Desynced finished fifth in Lima with Shadow Ursaring. He finished fifth in Rio with Zapdos and Shadow Registeel. He finished third in Fortaleza with Morpeko. So, I mean, come on. It doesn't get better than watching Desynced battle, and I wish we could have. I really appreciate that you mentioned the Chileans, some very talented ones. This is kind of under the radar, but one of the biggest creators in all of LATAM Pokemon Go actually finished in the top eight. If you look at slot number 6 over here, Swagron 333 YouTube, the guy who basically is like bringing massive crowds together. He's like everyone's favorite guy to be around to talk about. He's got the iconic, like platinum blonde hair. He's hosted events like NAIC. Such a talented and friendly and kind person, and also a very gifted creator. And look at him playing PvP. Not only did he qualify for Worlds last year, but he's also finishing top cut and right next to names like Marta, Javier, Harjef, Steiner, Emilio. He's right there next to them in this top eight.
Yeah.
And
I
I want to give
always love to see people who very skillfully talk the talk. Also, just to see them walking the walk at one of these events. I know that
yeah,
your co-caster Softov is competing in Portland, if I'm not mistaken.
it's
So that
true.
will be another example to witness potential caster greatness in action. And yeah, with Swagron doing the same in Santiago, that was certainly a very impressive performance with as I want to point out, the exact same team as Marto, so also a very strong meta
Mm.
call.
Very strong meta call. Yeah, I agree with you. Being able to walk the walk is not something that all of us can do. We're gonna see if I can do that at NAIC, but I might need some crutches by the time I leave because I'm gonna get absolutely destroyed. Speaking of teams that are similar, you mentioned Marto and Swaggeron running the same teams. Harjeff and Steiner, two trainers that were basically the beating heart of NAIC last year. Such an emotional and such a very powerful tale of friendship with those two, running the exact same teams, both making top cut. I love to see Steiner competing. I think he's one of the best in the world. Obviously, there's no argument for Harjeff either. Rivals, friends, even translators for each other when they were up on stage. I mean, those guys can do it all. So I really love seeing them there. Also, shout out to Steps as well. I've met Steps at a few different events. Seeing him top cut is really, really poetic and cathartic to see. Very, very kind person to hang out with and to grab a beer with. So shout out to Steps. But what an incredible tournament. Again, I wish we had a stream. Just Minas, we were right there with you. We really wish that there was one. Fingers crossed in the future. I mean, Pokemon is basically a rocket ship, and Pokemon Go is tied to it. So we're going to see if that rising tide lifts all boats, as you and I have discussed. I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to mention about Santiago. We've got a couple of TPC events to talk about, and then we have in-game events, and I think we can wrap up.
Yeah, I think we've talked about Santiago at length, given what we were given. But yeah, like to the point of the streams and how they have developed. Ahead of the event, or like ahead of the recording, rather, I did share some pictures from the Utrecht event in 2023 when it was
Yeah.
my brother competing. And while it was nice to have that stream, it's also very striking to see how much TPCi has invested in making the streams shine since, with like the caster's desk looking so polished and cute and decorated every time, and just like all the lighting coming together. Like the production value has really been stepped up in recent years, and if they can polish up the European scene, I think it must be possible for them to eventually also bring the LATAM scene on the map a little more. I feel like if you treat them and as you should, like with the same amount of qualification slots for Worlds, you should also treat them with the same amount of care when it comes to establishing the broadcast. And I know that's like easier said than done, and it's very easy for me to just yap about it. But I really hope that they're working on that, because I can't wait to see more of those trainers. And
Uh,
honestly, the same goes for those remote qualifiers that we see in the APAC region, where we had some more playoffs, some more decisive tournaments that um, essentially gave us, I think, four more Worlds qualifiers, two in Taiwan and two in Thailand.
mhm.
Where do you want to start, Speedy?
Oh, I wanted to echo your sentiment. I don't ever want to come across as being ungrateful for what TPCi has done. I'll tell you what's most exciting to me is the fact that the North American streams versus the EU streams are so different. The caster desk in EU is much more ornate. It's like its own little scene where you could imagine like Pokemon concierge, dancing around on top. The lounge is different as well. The
You
most
guys have
exciting
mini
thing,
games that you play with the competitors between the scenes, and then there's like those little segments. We don't really have that.
well,
But yeah, there's like a lot of character to the individual regions for sure.
and that's what is so exciting to me about LATAM as well, because EU has a personality, NA has a personality. Imagine a brand new personality for LATAM that is signature, more for the region. The games are more tailored to the players in that region. It's more culturally rich. I think there's so much opportunity to have basically like three different identities for streams. And then, like you said, once we are able to bring APAC on board, have a fourth style of identity. I mean, how sick would it be if we had like commentators walking into Pokemon centers and live casting the battles for the for the qualifications, live casting them with the Pokemon Center behind them, and like this huge ornate shiny Gyarados in Osaka, or no, in Hiroshima, I believe. And then you've got another Pokemon Center with the legendary birds behind them. I mean, the backdrops, the stories would write themselves. It would be so sick. And I really hope we get there one day soon. And I think that's a great way to kind of move into our topics. Why don't we talk about Thailand first? I think that this tournament and the um, Thailand and Taiwan, I believe they were both the same weekend. We'll start with Thailand here. I really appreciate that Dracoviz made the post they did, because they said that TeddIness, third time was the charm. I believe he finished runner-up in Thailand the past 2 seasons. So getting gold here was really a huge step forward.
Yeah, TeddIness definitely a name that was recognizable to me, even though maybe the Apex scene isn't like always as prominently featured as the EU, LATAM, or North America scene. Another name that I do recognize is BJ Pawat, who finished within
Yeah.
the top 8. Um, there's Pangoro representation on the team of Mecha Mech in 5th place. There's Galadurge representation, which I'm always a big fan of, and in 3rd place by Hideki. And the two qualifiers are TeddIness with the team that we like last broadcast, last recording, we called it out as like a genre of team where there's like a Cradily, a Malamar, an A slash, a Golisopod, and then also Drapion, which was like a little different from the like more ground heavy, maybe more jump love heavy teams that we've seen. But this like one team just keeps winning for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it won for TeddIness. And there again, we see more Pangoro representation in 2nd place with Double Hippo, who essentially ran a very, very similar team, but with the Clodsire and the Pangoro instead of the Malamar and the Alolan Sandslash. So 4 out of the 6 identical, and then just a little bit of difference. I feel like those teams also look very neutral into each other. So I bet the final games must have been pretty exciting to watch.
So this is just another example of why I feel like we work so well together on the show, because you mentioned something that I was actually going to quiz you about when it came to TeddIness's team. So you mentioned the lack of ground, right? And if you look at this team from TeddIness, he's got Azumarill, Golisopod, Alolan Sandslash, Shadow Drapion, Cradily, and Malamar. No ground type on the team. I was going to ask you what his team was lacking that most other championship teams have, but instead, I'm going to take it up a level. I'm going to ask you this. So, no ground types on TeddIness's team when he won the TPC Thailand playoff event. There have been 38 events this season. To this day, Z's Wireless, how many champions have won without a ground type on their team out of 38 events?
That is a very good question.
I'll give you 5 seconds. I won't make you squirm too long, but if you're watching the YouTube version, you can see Z's Wireless breaking into a sweat right now.
Yes, I'll say it's 3 teams without a ground type.
Actually, you're very close. You're actually extremely close. So TeddIness wins Thailand with no ground type Pokemon. He's the first trainer to do that since Godzilla won in Brisbane. And those two trainers are 2 of only 4 that have won championship
Damn.
series events this season without a ground type Pokemon. 4 out of 38. So 34 other champions had at least a Claydol, a Diggersby, a Unova Stunfisk, a Clodsire, whatever on their team. So this is definitely not the norm, which is really impressive to see TeddIness succeed this way. I thought that was a mind-blowing stat. When I started looking at the teams, I was shocked to see that basically winning without a ground is taboo this season. Ground is so incredibly strong. Or Shadow Kanto Marowak. I almost forgot to mention that one.
Yes.
One thing I think you forgot to mention was in our top 8. You and I talked about this Pokemon, ZZ. You and I share an affinity for this pick. Talk to me about Sun Guoki's team.
Sun Gorky's team has a Suicune on there. I at
Yeah.
first did not see that because I'm not used to seeing that sprite on the Dracovish graphic, and my screen, like my monitor isn't so small, but it didn't immediately jump out at me just because it's such an unusual sight. I thought that was just a weirdly shaped Malamar, but no, it is a Suicune, probably running Ice Fang as like an interesting way of taking down opposing jump love. But
And
yeah,
ground
Suicune,
types.
one of the bulkier water types, actually, one of the many bulky water types, with access to, among other things, Ice Fang to Bubble Beam, and I think to Scald as well. So
Scald, yeah.
it's a little harder hitting water type move.
Sun Goki finishing top 8 with Jellicent, Galarian Corsola, so already double ghost, Corviknight, Wigglytuff, Suicune, and Primeape. What a team this is. Very, very impressive to see him finish top 8. I've been experimenting a little bit with Suicune in Go Battle League. It eats up Pokemon like Clodsire, like Shadowkent and Marowak, like Claydol. It also eats up Jumpluff with double super effective Ice Fangs, although you do need to watch out for Energy Ball. And because there are no open team sheets in GBL, it's super risky to no shield a potential Energy Ball. But what a fun Pokemon to play, and honestly, kudos to Sun Gooki. We also saw Yagna with Galarian Moltres, kind of bringing that Pokemon back. Mecha Mech, as you pointed out earlier with the Galarian Corsola. York Zaza finishing in top 16 with Chansey, as well as Watery Phoenix with Shadow Empoleon. What is Watery Phoenix cooking? Who knows? Shadow Dust Noir also making an appearance for Hoodie. This is such a diverse set of Pokemon and teams, and I'm so excited to see TeddIness compete at Worlds.
I do also love that this top cut, like sometimes you see a Dracovic graphic where there's like a Sceptile on there, and you kind of wonder whether, okay, maybe they only found 16 players, but all of these teams look like deliberate creations that the
Mhm.
people that were playing them also put thought into. And just this amount of spice is like really inspiring. I think like claps in the chat for Thailand. That was a great show. Like I bet it must have been because the diversity is really unheard of, and like
Yeah.
there are only five Tinkaton as well.
Mhm.
Whereas there's a Melmetal, there's a Chansey, there's a Shadow Empoleon, there's an Ariados, there's a Shadow Dusknoir. There's everything.
Yeah, I was noticing a lot of Clodsire in this tournament as well, which is a little bit
That's
surprising to
true.
me. Maybe it's a Clodsire heavy region, and that kind of
A
dissuades
lot
the
more
Tinkaton
Clodsire
players.
than Tinkaton. Yeah, we don't see
Yeah,
that very often.
surprising, right? It just shows you again, like when we started the max out season for Alligator, Clodsire was all the rage. It was dominating the meta. These Pokemon, individually or together, can still be very, very strong. Again, the diversity of these past 6 months of gameplay. I think this is probably the most diverse, the most fluid, the most flexible, and the deepest meta we've had in a very, very, very long time, maybe ever. Um, that's all I really have to say about the Thailand qualifiers. Again, congratulations to TeddIness for taking that first place prize. I believe Rise to Occasion actually broke down the footage. I haven't watched his video yet, but head over to Rise's channel and check out his showcase of that tournament run. We've got one more event to cover. ZZ, do you want to talk about Taiwan?
Yes, Taiwan is essentially um, it feels like a sibling to Thailand in that where we just talked about a player who is like a serial runner-up finisher who now got his first real title in one of those playoffs. We now have another staple of the Taiwanese community in Gamebird, who already won last year's event and qualified for Worlds, and now just repeated that feat with the
Mhm.
team that won Milwaukee in the hands of OutOfPoket, only changing the non-shadow jump love for the largely considered superior shadow jump love. So a very reliable team composition and a very reliable trainer, always at the top of the leaderboards, um, defeating the competition. And we do see some staple names. I recognize Nico Paradise, who
Mhm.
was hosting a good amount of practice tournaments in the Candle Cult server from Marshine and Eloquence ahead of this event. So really putting in practice, getting rewarded. Unfortunately, not with the Worlds Invite, but still with the top 8 finish. The second Worlds Invite goes to Mi Chang 1978 with again the Galarian Corsola, which
Mhm.
maybe North America and Europe have been overlooking this Pokemon. It's still fairly
Mhm.
highly ranked on PvPoke, but that definitely seems to be a standout pick on that team. Again, a Shadow Blastoise on the team of Alien B in third place.
Mhm.
So very close to making waves, but still just this one position short from actually grabbing the World's Invite. And when we look a little further down the bracket, in terms of spice, I feel like the standout next to maybe the Mantine on Nico Paradise's team would likely be the Shadow Galade on the team of Doge Duge Dashen. Again, partnered with a Galarian Corsola. So
Yeah.
the fighting type plus Galarian Corsola. Many people opt for Primate or Annihilate, but apparently Shadow Glade is also an option that has been considered.
Shadow Glade sounds like a lot of fun. Of course, it's basically made of paper mache. Definitely a very difficult Pokemon to pilot. And I feel like when we talk about these TPC qualifiers, I feel like a lot of the times with the actual qualifier stage, we see some wacky stuff, whether it's a Donphan or a Hippowdon or anything spicy like a Gallade. But then when you get to the playoff stage and those top 16 players are all battling for their world's invites and you still bring a Shadow Gallade, that takes some guts. It takes some confidence in what you're attempting to do. So that was really really sick to see that. I'm trying to remember because I see a Shadow Swampert here as well on Anferny's Anferny HSU. Excuse me, it's a very difficult name to say. Anferny's team. It looks like Shadow Swampert, Lapras, Corviknight is a strong trio there. Was there a Shadow Swampert winner earlier this season? I feel like there was.
I think Swampert featured on HK Assassin's team in Sevilla to actually take the title
Correct.
there.
Correct. I was wondering like how similar that team was because again, you called out that Game Bird, also TWBB and Victor Chu were all running out of pocket Nighttime Clasher and Sustenance Eater's team from Milwaukee. But I'm wondering if there's any inspiration here as well. It looks like HK was running Lapras, Unova, Stunfisk, Tinkaton, Shadow Swampert, Talonflame, and Superior. So maybe not exactly the same, but a little bit of inspiration. I like to say. Um, Again, no stream unfortunately for this tournament, so all we can really do is talk about the teams, appreciate and admire the spice. Mantine making top cut is that Pokemon. I don't know. It would never be me.
There are
ZZ.
opinions.
If I place top 8 in a tournament with Mantine, that is not actually me. That is something else wearing my skin, playing as me. Because I would never play it. But I'm glad it worked out for Nico.
It's like the
Um,
third best water flying type, maybe fourth if you consider Shadow Swanna.
yeah. I think I actually have a Great League rank 1 Shadow Swanna. So I played that before I played Mantine, trust me. Um, a fun tournament, fun qualifier. Again, would love to see Game Bird and Mitchang at the World Championships in Anaheim this season. You called out the Shadow Blastoise. That was also in my notes. I would love to see Blastoise get a gold medal this season, but it's kind of running out of chances because there are only 5 events left before Worlds. So we're going to see. It looks really good in the Sims. I'll say that. I was like, for my caster picks for Portland, this is something I do, and I'm kind of giving away my secrets here. What I'll do is I'll take like the top Pokemon and from previous weeks, I'll put them all into PvPoke, and then I'll just ask what the top threats are. And that's essentially how I make my caster predictions. So Shadow Blastoise is on my caster predictions because against like one of the sets I had of top Pokemon, it was like 9-1 versus this assortment of 10 Pokemon. It looks really good in the one shield. I can understand why people play it. I would love to see Shadow Blastoise succeed, but it's had a bit of trouble making waves, as you eloquently put earlier with a water pun. That's a very, very nice touch. DZ, I think that's all I have to say personally on the tournament coverage. We can talk about upcoming events and kind of wrap up the show if you want.
Yeah, we should. I think the next one on this upcoming weekend actually is being held in Portland. It's going to be the send off for the North American regional season, not the entire North American season, because we will have NAIC in New Orleans in June.
Correct.
But yeah, this is going to be actually a caster's debut, if I'm not mistaken, because House Stark is actually going to feature on the broadcast for the first time.
He is. Yeah, Alex is going to commentate his first event. I'm really excited. As you know, I've been friends with Alex literally for years. Great guy. I'm really excited to work with him this weekend. It's going to be really tremendous. He's so talented, so intelligent, and it's going to be fun as well to kind of like spotlight him on stream. I'm going to talk about how he was the first rank 10 trainer in the world that we know of back in the days of Toxicroak, Registeel, and Altaria, or Azumarill, I believe was his team. So there's a lot of history there. But you nailed it. Upcoming events, let's run through them real quickly. Only 5. I'm going to mention all of them because they're coming up soon. Portland, May 24th through 25th. We head over to Durban, South Africa on May 25th. May 31st through June 1st is Bologna. And then we've got NAIC June 13th through the 15th, followed by the PJCS, the Pokemon Japan Championship Series event. That is the final event before Worlds. Correct me if I'm wrong, but due to the new rule set, I believe that Shadow Malamar is only eligible in Durban, South Africa forward. Or no, actually, excuse me, it's going to be Bologna.
I
Bologna is
think
the
it's
first
only
time that
Bologna,
it's
yes.
it's
Yes,
eligible.
because there's a 2 week cooldown period before you can actually use it in battle. So
Correct.
and maybe just be like one tournament before whatever the June move update has in store for us, where we
Mhm.
can see the Shadow Malamar, which it does look very strong. I have played against some of them in GBL. The Go Battle Week just started, and yeah,
Mhm.
people are trying out their new shadows, and Malamar sure is one of them. So yeah, especially like a high attack one apparently gets some crazy wins. I haven't made the deep dive just yet, but yeah, if you manage to grab one of those from the rocket stops over this past week, make sure to try it out.
We've got 24 days. If you're listening to this right now, I believe May 21st is the day we're recording. If you're listening to this right now, you've got 24 days, everybody. You've got 3 weeks and 3 days to get championship points before NAIC. Remember, NAIC is the cutoff for Worlds. So check your place on your respective or regional championship points leaderboards. Make sure that you are making the cutoff for the World qualifications. Otherwise, you're going to have to watch from the sidelines. So make sure to get those points and get them quick. I really appreciate that you mentioned in-game events like Go Battle Week that actually kicked off today, going from May 21st to the 27th. I'm going to put this graphic up on the YouTube stream, but if you're just listening to the broadcast, I want to tell you about this because this event is a little bit complicated. This is not just any Go Battle Week, Z's Wireless. This is the Final Strike Go Battle Week. All right. So from 10 a.m. local time on May 21st to 8 p.m. Local time on May 27th, you get 2 times XP for winning raid battles, increased chance to encounter shiny Metatite, shiny Stunky, and shiny Marini. You get 1 extra raid pass per day. So if you're hurting for charge TMs like I am, use those free raid passes. You also are going to get a double Pokemon debut. The Wushu Pokemon, Urshifu, will make its Pokemon Go debut. You can evolve Kubfu into Urshifu single strike form with 200 Kubfu candy after you defeat 30 dark type Pokemon in either raids or max battles, with Kubfu as your buddy. You do not have to defeat the Pokemon with Kubfu itself. So please don't throw your little Kubfu into a max battle. It's going to get crushed. Play something else instead. You can evolve Kubfu into Urshifu Rapid Strike. So there are 2 forms, Single Strike and Rapid Strike, with 200 Kubfu candy after defeating 30 water type Pokemon in raids or max battles with Kubfu as your buddy. You do not have to use Kubfu in the battles. So Single Strike is all based around one decisive blow. Put all your energy into it, knock them out, end the fight quickly. Urshifu Rapid Strike is more like Goku. You kind of throw a bunch of hits, you see how strong your enemy is, and you keep on throwing hits until eventually you're able to beat them. Pokestop showcases are going to be active. Spawns, Mankey, Seal, Galarian Zigzagoon, Metatite, Froakie. Some trainers can encounter Dino and Nickit. And then in raids, you're going to get Carvana, Stunky, and Marini. 3-star raids, you're going to get Lapras, Hisuian Samurott, and Bombardier, which is pretty sick.
I
The
actually got a
win.
shiny Bombardier today from one of
Ooh,
those raids, so
very fun.
that is really pretty.
I like it because the 3 stars, depending, right, you can either solo or duo them. So getting those 30 wins that you need, it's going to be painful to use those raid passes, but at least the raid bosses are not too tough, and they could be useful down the line. If you want to shortcut the shiny Bombardier Z's Wireless style, you can actually get the field research of win 2 raids, which can either give you the Lapras, Hisuian, Samurott, or the Bombardier. There's also a big special research page. I won't go through all the details there, but yeah, this is actually a pretty special event. It's a little bit different than previous Go Battle Weeks that used to have a theme. Like you used to be able to like unlock Ember Ninetales one season, and then they went without a theme for a long time. I think Niantic just let them sit on the back burner. And now we have like a very special one, which I think is definitely tying into Go Fest. So this page from Leak Duck, seriously, ZZ, I'm just scrolling and it keeps on going. There's so much here. There's so many events stacked on events these days, but that's what you need to know as a PvP player. One more thing I wanted to mention. I promise I'm almost done. Dynamax Rookity Hour is going to be May 26th from 6 to 7 p.m. You're going to see Rookities in all the Dynamax slots. So if you need a good Corviknight, or if you want to pick up some Corviknight to potentially reroll and trade, Dynamax doesn't affect them in PvP, and they're hard to find in the wild. So this might actually be a good excuse to go out and do Dynamax stuff, because I don't know what else it's good for besides farming and re-rolling. So it might be a good opportunity. But yeah, that's my long-winded story about events. Machop Community Day Classic is May 24th. That's going to be going on the weekend of Portland. So that's going to be, pretty fun. I already have my Machops the way that I want. I'm good on that. But if you want to evolve a Shadow Machop up to Shadow Machamp with Payback, I believe is the move it's going to get, that's a good opportunity to do that. Last thing I'll say, I swear this is the last thing. Core breakers for May, I've got 2. I've got Shadow Quagsire and I've got Ice Fang Suicune. Those are my core breakers.
Oh, that is very spicy. I can see the Quagsire. I would love to see the Suicune. I don't know whether I will see it though.
Gotta
So,
believe.
mm, let me quickly come up with something. So,
Okay.
core breakers for the upcoming tournament. I think Lantern is bound to make a comeback. I have seen people perform really well with Watergun Lantern in practice. I think now that Azumarill is making a little bit of a comeback, now that Jumpluff for the most part is still only ever running the double flying charge attacks, there is reason to bring in the Lantern, which can function similarly to a Unova Stunfisk, just with a much better matchup against the ground types that would give Stunfisk trouble. And then we were talking about the Joust tournament earlier, which is a monthly tournament, I think, hosted by the newly rebranded Cerulean Court, mainly led by Landberger, Amanda Landberg, one of our beloved European casters. And we too actually matched up in that event, Speedy. I will not talk at length about how the battles went, but I will share the fact that I did bring in Ariados on my team, and I managed to win the entire tournament. Maybe I also spoiled how the battles went by revealing that. So I think Ariados can actually do something. It may not always be perfect against like a Lapras, where the Psy Waves just hit for consistent, very hard damage, but you essentially wall the Tinkaton back. You have ways to fight back against Malamar, against Jumpluff. If you utilize
Azumarill.
Trailblaze and lunges really well, exactly like Azu. I think having like a good poison type back in the meta, I think that can go really far, and Ariados is my pick.
I'm not sure what your final win-loss record ended up being, but I was told by tournament admins that I was the only one to take a game off of you in the
Marcus
tournament.
Aurelius, Marcus also mentioned to do that in the finals, but other than that, that is actually correct.
Well, I'll take it. All right. We've got again one of EU's best, going toe to toe with the best trainers in the world, seemingly every other weekend, versus little old me hiding in the caster booth for multiple seasons. I'll take one win off of ZZ after pseudo retirement here. So that's good enough for me. ZZ, it's been a pleasure. We covered a lot of events. Again, we started with Melbourne. We traveled 10,000 miles over to Utrecht. We talked about Santiago, and we also recapped the TPC Thailand and TPC Taiwan playoffs as well. Talked about in-game events, talked about records being broken, history being made. And remember, everybody, there are only 3 more weeks to get your championship points to qualify for Worlds. Write your own story in the history books, and only 5 events left this season before the big one in Anaheim. So ZZ, I'm off to Portland tomorrow, flying out a day early to record skits. Hopefully there'll be some funny ones. I've got some good things planned, and I hope you and everyone else watching enjoys them. And I hope that you have a great weekend. I hope you have a good recovery. I know that you kind of have a little cold right now, so
Yeah,
I need you
just
in
a little under the weather, but still good enough to record 1.5 hours worth of podcasting.
I need you in tip top shape for NAIC, my friend, because it's gonna be absolute fireworks if you're able to make it out. But that being said, ZZ, I think this was a great episode. I appreciate you, and I look forward to talking with you after Portland.
Yeah, there's going to be just week after week after week. It's going to be exciting episodes, and I can't wait.
All right, my friend. Have a great one. Everyone, thank you for listening. Leave a YouTube comment if you enjoyed the show, and we appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.